put the case together from what you know, and then you write your master's thesis or dissertation talking about, well, I'm not going to accept the whole Iliad, but what if I can make this following story of that war, of what happened in Troy, the fall.
So let's apply that to Christianity. All right, we found Nazareth, we found some nails. Okay, Jesus probably existed. He probably was crucified. But are we going to accept that he rose from the dead and walked on water?
Oh, this guy Lee Strobel, he was a lawyer, an investigative journalist, and hardline atheist, and da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay, he was a lapsed Lutheran with a master's in legal studies. Okay, he was not a lawyer. So in 80 to 81, he did this project for the Chicago Tribune, which was sort of looking into the tenets of Christianity. Now, we don't hear anything about what research he did there. We don't know who he talked to, like nothing. The story that we get fed is that his wife converted, and so then he went on this like war path to try and, debunk her beliefs. Well, in reality, he became a pastor at a church in 1987. He didn't write this book until 1998, and the only people that he consulted for this book were Christians.
All right, who's the big authority on the resurrection? Dr. Gary Habermas. Because he thinks I'm trying to assassinate Christianity. You sure you want to hand me that gun?
I'm pretty sure you're not going to be able to pull the trigger.
Welcome back to the Gnostic Informant. You are about to attain true gnosis. And I'm here with Heathen Queen, who is a TikToker.
That's true.
Popping on, and you now have a YouTube channel too. So go and
a begrudging TikToker.
It's you and two of your friends. I was watching it the other day. It was pretty good.
So we have two. I have two. One is with me and Andrew and Jagazis, and then the other is just mine. Because even though I am acerbic on that channel, I'm not quite free to be me, So I have my own, and I'm just sort of starting to build that one. But yeah.
Well, I'll put the links in the description for both of them, so people can go check that out. Go subscribe, and let's get right into it. So we're talking about Lee Strobel, Case for Christ, and his daddy, basically. His big source is Gary Habermas, who is I got a lot to say about him. We're gonna hold that. He's the final boss. So let's gonna hold the final boss for the end. But I just want to play this clip for you just to see what you think, and then it'll get everything going.
The world's top biblical experts who told CBN News there's good reason to have faith in your faith.
The faith is very, very defendable. That's why it's lasted for 2,000 years.
They point to how even respected non-believers wrote about Jesus.
16 total historians, apart from the scripture, everything else, that reference Christ. Almost everything about Christ we can find out without ever going to the New Testament.
The fact is, surviving manuscripts we have for almost any ancient writings were produced hundreds of years after those original writings.
Jonathan Morrow tells students at the Impact 360 Institute there's more evidence that Jesus lived than Julius Caesar, yet no one doubts Caesar existed. Also, a rule is the closer in time the writer was to events, the more likely his account is accurate. Peter, John, and James lived with Jesus.
John said, what our eyes have seen.
All right, let's pause it right there. There's so much shit in that what is that, a minute or 2 minutes?
God, I'm fucking stressed. Like they talk about, sorry, there is so much, but this is the freshest where they're like, oh, well, John said this. First of all, where are you even getting that? We don't even know who wrote the Gospels. Like, well, John?
This is what you just said is important to what we're going to get to Gary Habermas, because he's comparing the sources for Alexander the Great as being 400 years later, which is false. I looked into this. There's people writing about him while he's alive. We have evidence of that. Anyways, he's using he's using the little manuscripts pieces that look like this as saying that John, here, look, this is what they look like. He uses those.
I mean,
and says, oh yeah, John was writing in the 1st century. Like, first of all, we don't even have a 1st century. Even those, they're in like the late 2nd, maybe 3rd.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he's like, yeah, we have evidence in the first. You can't have it both ways.
I don't understand how someone can have a PhD and still be so fucking dumb. No, I can, because Frank Turek has one. But it's just bends my mind that people say with their whole chest things that are demonstrably wrong and not even hard to demonstrate that it's wrong.
My question is, where's all the other historians, like trained PhD historians, come in to be like, what the fuck is you talking about? Like Julius Caesar. This is the Gallic Wars, the Alexandrian War, African War, Spanish War. These were written by his generals. Like while he's alive, they're writing down everything he's doing.
Don't you know the disciples are like Jesus's generals, and they wrote the Gospels, obviously.
Right. That's exactly, and that's what they'll say. And it's like, okay, but here's the thing. Let's go to Julius Caesar real quick. Here's the coin from Brutus the year after he was killed. It has the Ides of March on it. All right, so he's bragging that he killed Caesar and restored the Republic, right?
Yeah.
Now, where do you have that for Jesus? Where do you have a piece of archaeology from Judas or something or anything?
No,
where do you have anything like that?
I'm not even fully convinced that Judas wasn't just a literary device, but hey,
right? Like, there's just tons of stuff that you can touch with your own hand that says Julius Caesar was a lie. You have, what's another one that I have?
You have correspondence, which is really important, like contemporary correspondence for Julius Caesar, of which you have none for Jesus, as far as I'm aware.
And like that, and that's the big difference. Is like, if Julius Caesar, let's say Julius Caesar was a myth, now you have to go with full blown QAnon, aliens are in the government, because you would have to say there's a huge conspiracy by the Roman Empire to create Julius Caesar because of how much he affected the world. He conquers Gaul, he conquers Africa. He goes, all these places are writing up. Cicero talks about Cicero, hated him. He's writing about him. And so that would affect everything. The whole entire history would have to be changed completely. Now, Jesus, I'm not saying he didn't live, but like if he was a myth and nothing changes. Everything just goes on the same. Because you just say someone wrote about him. That's it.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I can't say I'm sure. I'm pretty sure that some guy named Jesus existed and was probably crucified, but like, I'm pretty sure that a lot of guys named Jesus were probably crucified because the Roman Empire didn't give a fuck. Like, they would nail you up there for fun. So, like, this idea that this is some unique story,
right,
including the fact that, like, his body would have even been put in a tomb, like, they didn't put bodies in tombs. They dumped you in a hole in the ground with a bunch of other bodies.
Especially if you were some random guy from Nazareth that came to visit for one weekend. And we're going to give you a royal tomb like you're some king or something. Like, if you had a tomb, you were like the king. You were like some really important high priest or something. You didn't just give somebody a tomb. You know how expensive that is? Yeah, some poor random guy from Nazareth, who we hate, by the way. We don't even like him. We just killed him. We're going to put him in a tomb. No, you're not going to put him in a tomb. You're going to bury him with all the rest of the criminals. That's it. Tartarus was the name of the pit. That's where you're going.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's common sense.
Well, that's something Christians are generally sorely lacking. But I mean, it's Occam's razor, right? So what is the simplest solution to this problem? Not what is the most complicated, like, weirdest way this could go. Like, there's so many exceptional claims beyond just the resurrection. Just the tomb, right? That's an exceptional claim. Or anyway, we can get into this. Sorry, I could talk forever about this.
It's like, all right, let's say we have a tomb. Let's say there was a tomb. Where is it now? Do we know where it is? No. Okay, well,
you could ask S.J. Thomason. She knows where the Shroud of Turin is. So, yeah.
That is so crazy. A shroud that has a photograph of his face on it, and like, think about
how do you know it's his, even if it's.
And here's another thing. What other characters in history do we have a shroud of?
Right.
That's not a thing. There's no shrouds. It's so obvious. Oh, I have a shroud of his face. It's the most obvious thing that somebody's trying to pull a trick or some sort of stunt. Like, when a shroud, why would there be a shroud? How does it even? Is it his mirror? Did he perform his last miracle?
He miracled the shroud. He was like, it's like a fucking Nickelback song. Like, look at this photograph, people. Take it with you. Anyway, but then this is like the case for Christ, right? There's a whole bunch of crazy ass shit in there that he wants. Whatever. Sorry. Let's get through this video before I talk to you.
This is perfect. I want to get into the case for Christ because this video, I have a lot in there. I'm not going to use all of it, but we'll skip through it a little bit. But I actually do want to touch on the case for Christ because when I was a Christian, this was the big kahuna next to the Bible. This was like the baby Bible.
The big gotcha.
Yeah, they sold Bibles, or they gave away Bibles, but sold them actually. And but the other books they would order and sell in the church was Case for Christ or Josh McDowell's Evidence Demands a Verdict. These are the ones these are the big three in our church. So
they're all garbage.
And tell me, don't you get these comments all the time? You gotta read Case for Christ. Dude. It has all the answers. It's like more than the Bible to them.
It is so fucking annoying. Because one, I read The Case for Christ. I read Evidence That Demands a Verdict. I read all of these books that supposedly prove religion because I wanted to believe. Right. I grew up indoctrinated in the church. That's all I knew. That was my whole community. That was everything. And so I wanted to believe.
Me too.
So yeah, I read all of these things. And the way that I left was actually doing research. And so at least once every time I post a video that has anything to do with the Bible, I get this, which there's lots of proof. Just read The Case for Christ. Bitch, what the fuck do I look like? An idiot?
Right.
What do I look like to you? I'm literally sitting here explaining all of this stuff from the Bible, and you think I haven't read Lee Strobel's book? Okay.
And his big kahuna source is Gary Habermas. And they love talking about the minimal facts thing, or how the apostles wouldn't have died. No, they wouldn't have died going for something that's a lie. They wouldn't do that.
That is
first of all, we don't even know how they died because Eusebius is writing in 325, and this is the source we have for all the martyrdoms.
So 150 years later, whatever it is, like
200 years later.
Yeah.
And so this is the same guy who we have confirmed has interpolated texts, forged stuff, lied about stuff. He said Philo met Peter. It didn't happen. So let's put this in the eyes of a court, right? You got Eusebius is the witness, and we're cross-examining him. He gets caught in a lie. Why would you believe anything else he says?
I mean, I wouldn't, but
that's like 101 of when you know what I mean? I'm not saying Eusebius is wrong about everything, but
yeah, but you shouldn't make it your foundational source for 100% fact.
Right.
That's
the church history, foundation of the church history is Eusebius.
That argument has to be one of the. It's like when someone makes that argument to me, I just feel sorry for them, because it's lots of people die for lots of things. Right. Even if you assume that they did go to their death and were martyred, and we don't, like you said, really have any evidence for that almost at all. Maybe a couple of people were put to death, but we don't even have any kind of indication that the higher ups in the Roman Empire were paying attention to Christians until 113, right, when we see Pliny and is it Trajan?
Yeah.
Write to each other, and they're like, "What do we do with these people?" So there's clearly not a legal precedent, and he says don't do anything, just sort of leave them alone unless you have to do something. So who is putting these people to death?
And another thing is, the ones who did die, how do you know they were trying to repent? How do you know they weren't trying to say, okay, fine, I don't believe, don't kill me, and then they still got killed anyway? You don't know that. That could have happened too. It could go. There's a million possibilities that we don't know.
There's a story, and I wish I remembered who was emperor at the time, but effectively a bunch of Christians, they wanted to be put to death because they thought martyrdom would be, I guess, the quickest ticket to heaven or something. So they go in the middle of the night to his house, and they're demanding to be martyred. And the guy's like, if you want to die, there's plenty of ways to do it, but it's not going to be here, bitch. I'm paraphrasing, but that's that's it. And so it's we don't know how they died with any kind of certainty. Second, we don't know if they recanted. And third, most of the time, or not most of the time, there weren't laws on the books about Christians. They were being charged with other things, sedition, or Nero charged him with the, the fire or whatever. But it's a lot of the times I don't even think you could assume that recanting would mean that you're not going to die. Because if you're getting charged with sedition or rabble rousing and you're like, sorry, I don't believe in Jesus, you're still charged with those things.
If you're going to the cross, you're going to the cross. That was like the number one way to kill people in the Roman Empire was crucifixion.
I mean, they ran out of wood at one point.
Yeah,
they crucified so many people.
If you're going, you're going, and that's it. And the Romans did not like to look weak, so when they condemn someone to death, you're going
back.
You're not going to be like, oh, sorry, I repent. No. I'll worship Jupiter. Go ahead. Don't kill. No, they're killing you.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there was certainly a point where emperor worship was an important aspect, and so there could have been consequences for not worshiping, the emperor or the imperial cult. But I think this idea that Christians were so widely persecuted simply for their beliefs is just fundamentally false.
I think a lot of it rubs off of what happened with the Jews. The Jews with getting completely exterminated during the year of 70. A lot of their history could have been borrowed in the church history, saying, "Oh well, there was Christians there too, so that was us."
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's interesting because even when you read the book of Matthew, you can sort of see it develop as this polemic to Judaism, right? And so I have to wonder anyway, if there wasn't this we don't like the Jews because they believe differently than us. So we're going to write this narrative that is anti-Jewish, but then also after the temple was destroyed and all of these people were wiped out, it was like, well, we can co-opt some of this tragedy to sort of build the rest of our religion because they already thought they were better than the Jewish folks.
And so the case for Christ, I don't know what it is about that book.
First of all, the way that this book was marketed is fucking false. So you might remember, I certainly do, because my dad thought it was the coolest shit ever. Oh, this guy, Lee Strobel, he was a lawyer, an investigative journalist, and hard-line atheist, and da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay, he was a lapsed Lutheran with a master's in legal studies. Okay, he was not a lawyer. He did work at the Chicago Tribune as their legal editor, so I'll give him that. But he was not a Christian. He wasn't an atheist like we think of it today. He just was a lapsed Lutheran who thought religion was kind of silly. So in 80 to 81, he did this project for the Chicago Tribune, which was sort of looking into the tenets of Christianity. Now, we don't hear anything about what research he did there. We don't know who he talked to, nothing. The story that we get fed is that his wife converted, and so then he went on this war path to try and, debunk her beliefs. Well, in reality, he became a pastor at a church in 1987. He didn't write this book until 1998. And the only people that he consulted for this book were Christians.
Oh, man. How many times, do you know how many people I know, not really Christian, but they weren't hardcore atheists. They were just agnostic. And they meet a girl who's a Catholic and they all of a sudden they convert because they want to be with that person. I can think of 3 people right now on the top of my head. One of them I had on this show, and some of you guys know who I'm talking about. One of them was I interviewed him on this show. Is one of those people, and I'm not saying anything bad about the people. That's just what. Hey, they meet somebody. You're already leaning towards that belief anyway. I would bet that Lee Strobel was already leaning towards God existing and sort of wanting it to be true, but not being a practicing Christian. And then he meets his wife. His wife gets married. They get married. His wife's really serious, and then he just follows suit. That's probably what happened.
Well, and at the time, so right around, I believe, when he was, I can't remember if it was writing the book or becoming a pastor, but I read somewhere that he was having some marital issues. So it would have made sense, right? That he wants to do whatever she wants to do to make it
work. I'll write a book for you. I promise.
Yeah, I promise. I'll prove your faith.
Yeah.
And so he didn't approach it with any journalistic integrity.
Absolutely
He not. Didn't approach it with any integrity at all, if you're asking me. But for instance, in this book, he quotes this eminent archaeologist, Jerry Vardaman. Okay. This man is a crackpot. He I'm going to assume that your listeners are relatively well informed. So most people will know Herod died in 4 CE. Quirinius was governor in 6 CE, right? These are basic sort of time stamps. Jesus died around 30, 31, something like that. So all of these basic sort of ideas. So he theorized, this man Bartman theorized, that Jesus was actually born in 12 BC, which is like, you know what, I'm gonna leave that one alone. Pilate governed from like 15 to 26. Jesus was crucified in 21, and Paul's road to Damascus was 25.
Oh my
AD?
God, that's what he says right now?
So this is the man he's quoting in his book, and the evidence for this, dude, like
because it says that he starts his ministry in the 14th year of Tiberius, which is, we have a date for that. Like, we know when that was. So
wait till you hear his evidence.
Even if he was right, that would mean the Bible is wrong. So he's disproving the Bible if he's right. So he can't. Christians can't go with that. But go ahead.
Oh, never stopped him before. Like when I read this, I was like, oh my, I know you're fucking playing with me. Like, this guy claimed that all of this, the evidence for this, was that he and some other archaeologists had found some coins in the British Museum. They had examined them under a microscope, and there was micro letters on the coins, and they said like Quirinius, and then they had like Rex, Jesus, and like Messiah, and also that they would have had to been inscribed with a diamond tipped instrument of some sort. Now, let alone the fact that nobody else has ever found any of these. It's never been in a peer-reviewed journal. They've never published anything on it. The coins would have been so weathered by the time we would have gotten to them that any micro lettering would not have survived. Right. On top of that, there's a letter J on one of them. Okay, J, the letter didn't come for quite some time after that.
So this is Latin you're talking about. And then, so the letter J would be a letter I. Okay, good point.
No, but it was like a full-on J, like J for Jessica on this coin.
So this is a forgery, clearly.
It's a bullshit-ass claim. So it gets worse. So this is this man's evidence for all of this dating that Strobel is using in his book to reconcile the dates of the census and Quirinius's proconsulship. And because, in Matthew and Luke, they contradict each other. The two stories where it says like the census was held in this year, Jesus was born under Herod's rule. Like they can't both be true. And it's actually like when you're looking for contradictions in the Bible, it's the one that everybody sort of comes up with first. But regardless of that, so in 2003, Strobel was on someone's show doing something, and they brought this to him, like, look at these claims that your boy made, and like, this is who you're citing. And he was like, oh, I hadn't heard about that. I'll have to check it out. Much like, never mind. You know what?
No wonder why he writes. No wonder why he puts out a new book every year. It's trying to bury.
But it gets worse.
The older books. Don't worry about my old books. Look, I got a new book. Yeah. Look, there's a new one.
Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
But it gets worse. So in 2005, he's on Fox News or whatever, doing some piece on the war on Christmas, which is just like, kill me. And he spouts this stuff about the coins again. Like, he uses it he's parroting this talking point like he doesn't know it's horse shit. It's like bizarre. And I'm like, this is who you all are pointing me to?
Wow, that is fucking crazy. I didn't even know that.
Brain small. Yeah, he's a joke. And then also, I mean, this is a side note. He was serving under a pastor. Now, I can't say he knew about this. I don't know. But he was serving under a pastor at one of his churches who stepped down because he had several allegations of sexual harassment. And then his entire eldership also stepped down because they said they mishandled the claims. But Strobel didn't know.
Wow. That's crazy. There's a
lot of... He didn't, but
there's always bullshit that's surrounding all these types of people. You ever notice that?
Yeah. Oh, dude. I'm like the FBI over here. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you see it like this week. MacArthur's shit. Did you see all the stuff that came out about him?
No. Which MacArthur?
Oh my God. John MacArthur?
No way. What happened?
Oh. So it came out, this article came out on the Royce Report, I believe. And there's a video. So it's like you can watch it for yourself. In 2002, MacArthur publicly shamed and excommunicated a woman by the last name of Gray. And he did this because she would not take her husband back. She had gone to MacArthur and the leadership and said, like, my husband is abusive. and he's abusive to the children, and I'm not going to go back to him. And in this video, MacArthur is sitting there saying, like, we tried to call her to repentance and she wouldn't extend any grace to her husband. And the Bible says we have to, like, discipline people that do that, and like on and on and on. Like, in the middle of passing out communion to his big ass church, guess where that man is now? The husband.
Where?
Serving 21 years in prison for corporal abuse of a child sexual molestation, and child abuse.
What the fuck's going on with child abuse this week?
I know. Yeah, trust me,
That
I
just
know.
happened this week? I mean, he got caught or he got arrested?
That came out this week. And then 2 more people who I guess, like, had their stories out before, but who it hadn't really been super available, are claiming, at least 2 people, that they were raped while they were at the Masters University, which is MacArthur's university. And when they went to the elders about it, one of them said they tried to get her to marry her rapist. And the other one said they just, like, swept it under the rug, didn't do anything about it, and then, like, basically made her out to be, like, crazy, right?
Right, of course.
So just, like, a long history of protecting abuse in
Not
this
just the
church.
Catholic Church.
No, absolutely not.
And the Protestants love to point to the Catholic Church and being like, "Oh, look at this, the devil's church. Oh, look at, they're getting caught again. They're caught again. Another rape."
Yeah.
It's like,
Oh my God. I mean,
you guys though, with your
dude,
private jets and shit.
Sorry, I apparently came on the show to just rake everybody. But like, Mike Winger the other day was posting about how there's this, like, how basically this camp that is for non-binary children to sort of teach them, not taught in schools. He was claiming that all of this sexual abuse is going to come out of it. And, we're going to hear all these stories in a couple months or a couple years about all the sexual abuse that happened at this camp. And I'm like, so where is your statement on John MacArthur, my guy? Like, why are y'all so eager to accuse people of things that haven't even happened? You're not going to take a look at your own house? Like, right. I remind him every day on Twitter. Made it my personal mission to make this man's life hard. Anyway, sorry, we've gotten way off track, but also, hi, Mike.
This is good. I'm glad I had you on, and we're gonna make this. There's still more. Like, we got to get into. We got to go for the jugular, because we got to go for the sources. Where are they getting all this bullshit from? That
I'll let you take it away.
That was what you just said was amazing. I did not know about that. That he uses the source for the same guy who probably forged these coins. Like, let's be real. He probably forged these coins.
Where are they coming from?
Right.
Like,
and hold on a second. Let's explore that real quick for 1 second, because who the hell, Jesus, the government hated him. Why would they make coins in his name? It's not like the Christians were running Jerusalem. Like, where are these coins printed out, first of all? Does anyone know?
I don't know.
Is it Rome?
No,
is it
because this whole
Egypt?
story is like garbage.
That's what the places that coins are being minted are like, where there's like royal, where there's like government, and like some guy.
Well, you're telling me that it says Rex Jesus, King Jesus, the Latin word for king, right? So Rome is printing these coins because, as far as I know, but as far as I know, Jewish folks had their own currency.
Right.
Like, they used their own currency. That's why it was give to Caesar what is Caesar's.
Yes,
because they had their own shit.
Abomination, right? It was idolatry to use Roman coins.
Exactly. So it's like, why are the Romans printing Jesus on a coin using Latin?
So crazy. And you know what's even crazier is that this is one of the sources that Habermas uses as his 17 sources outside the Bible.
Of the 17 extra-biblical, non-Christian sources within about 150 years of the life of Jesus, outside sources, Tacitus mentions the fact that Jesus died on the cross. He said Pontius Pilate was the Judean procurator. He said that Tiberius was the governor. You have Lucian, the famous satirist, who called him a crucified sophist. You've got Marabar Serapion, who tells his son to emulate Jesus, who gave his life, and so on. Josephus, in a passage that, although it's disputed, virtually everybody believes the portion about the cross there, that he died, and Josephus also mentions Tiberius Caesar. So this is all right there. You've got some Gnostic sources that mention these things. You've got Thales and Phlegon, 2 scholars that mention that the darkness surrounded the world when Jesus was crucified. So
Thales. I don't know why I said phallus. I wrote phallus, but it's Thales. Thallus.
Okay.
And apparently, him and Mara Bear Serapion, who supposedly lives in the 1st century, these are like fake sources that don't exist. Like, there's no copy of these. They're just being quoted later on by the church as people mentioning Jesus. The Mara Bear Serapion one, though, in particular, doesn't even say Jesus. It says the king of the Jews who was killed. So it could mean. Do you know how many king of the Jews were killed? Like, it could mean a million. There's like 20 different kings of the Jews that were killed. So like he could be talking about. And by the way, and what bothers me so much is that he never says Jesus once in this little sentence. It's a sentence, and and Gary Habermas literally goes, "Oh, in this, he tells his son to be like Jesus."
You've got Mara Bar Serapion, who tells his son to emulate Jesus, who gave his life, and so on.
No, he doesn't. You literally flat out lied. It doesn't say that at all. I have a clip of him saying that. I'm going to show that in a second. But this king thing, right? He's not a king. It's actually, they're mocking him. That's saying that he wants to be. They're calling him the king of the Jews. It's a mocking thing. He's not really a king. So the fact that somebody would write that,
and I mean, it's not like the Romans had like some huge affection for the Jewish people. I mean, they just stomped them, or they would be stomping them out like 30 years later. So like it just doesn't like, it doesn't make any sense. If you're gonna construct a bullshit ass argument, you could at least make it make sense,
right?
Like,
yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's like, do they actually believe that Jesus was a king? Like, is this what the churches are teaching people, that Jesus was actually the king of the Jews? Like, or like what? Where? It's not in the Bible. Like, where are you getting this from? It's not in
have a king, right?
Josephus
Their last like king was Herod,
right?
That was it. And then, well, I guess Archelaus, but he was deposed, and then from there it was like, all right, you become part of Rome now. So it's like, what? Do y'all read books? Any books outside of the Bible? No.
And they're probably saying, I read Josephus, and they probably went for that one little paragraph. I read the whole book.
You didn't read Josephus.
Yeah, you read
Somebody
that
told you it said that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so like, he looks like Professor Calamitous from Jimmy Neutron.
I thought that Gary Habermas looks like. Look at him. Is that him? That's him, right?
I'm telling you, you had glasses and a mustache.
Yeah, for sure. But seriously though, Gary Habermas reminds you of Peter Griffin with the PhD. Like the way
sounds like
sort of like, I don't know, whatever. Let's play this.
No original copies exist of the most well-respected and accepted ancient works.
When you look at Greek and Roman historians like Herodotus and Tacitus and Livy, those are hundreds of years later, 500, 600, 700 years after the...
No, they're not.
Yeah, I'm like, wait a second, what?
You can't preserve text in their original form in the ancient world. You have to copy them and then copy them and then copy them and pass it. So what he's doing is completely double standard. He's saying the text that we have for Herodotus and Livy and all those guys, those are all later 1st century, 2nd century copies. Well, yeah,
because that's the only way to keep them.
and then they don't apply that same standard to Christianity. They'll say Luke was written in 75 AD. Okay, where's that copy? Where's the physical copy of Luke from 70? Doesn't exist. Oh, why is that? Oh, because they have to copy them, pass them. Oh, you just answered your own question. Like that.
Dude,
that shit blows my mind.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm probably gonna hate for this, but I swear to God, the more audacity that men have, it's like the further their hair goes back. Like the audacity like pushes it out of their head. I swear, like every guy in this, and like no shade to people without hair, but it's like there's a trend here, bitch. Like something is going on. Anyway.
Oh, here we go. Here's Sean McDowell.
No.
He wrote an article. It says the historical evidence for Jesus versus Tiberius Caesar. He's claiming that there's more evidence for Jesus than Tiberius. So first we had Julius Caesar. Now we got Tiberius. Okay, let's look at this for a second. Here's Tiberius's tomb. Do we have Jesus's tomb? No.
I mean, it depends on who you ask.
We have physical evidence for Tiberius. We know when his reign was. He's in the frickin' Bible. Like it says in the 14th year of Tiberius. He's got coins in his name everywhere, all over the empire. He adopts Caligula. He's adopted by Augustus. For what? Like what? How do you compare the 17 manuscripts or whatever they're talking about to that? How could you? I don't understand that. Can somebody please explain to me? And then he uses some historian as a quote in there saying that there's no history for Tiberius. That's what he says. That's not true. There's a history written by Suetonius. Suetonius writes the 12 Lives of the Caesars. Guess who's one of those 12? Tiberius is one of those 12.
I want to know what it's like to just be aggressively mediocre and just get so much praise for it. Like, I want to write some bullshit and then make millions of dollars. I'll do it. I can do it right now. Like, how do you get to just spout shit? And like, people are like, oh my God, a genius.
Can you imagine how rich you would get if you, a famous atheist, decided to convert to Christianity? And even if you didn't, if you just did it as a money scheme, you would get rich. People would throw book deals at you. Here, write a story about how you converted. You would be the next. You would be so rich. But it's like, I'm not a piece of shit, so I'm not going to do that. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I'm sure. I'm sure it's happened. I'm sure it has.
Sure, I bet Lee Strobel did it.
Exactly. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Lee Strobel knows that what he's saying is bullshit.
I was going to say, at this point, you can't stop pushing your shit.
Right.
It's your legacy.
He's so far deep now that he just has to double down on the dumb shit. Now, Gary Habermas, I got so much shit on this, on what he. I'm not saying he's a bad person. I'm sure he's a good family guy. I'm sure he's. I said family guy. Get it? Peter Griffin. No, I'm sure he has a good. I'm sure he's a great person. You know, he's
That's funny.
I'm sure he's good. I'm sure he's a smart guy, but he's full of shit. I'm about to show you that right now. So let me play a couple minutes.
How are you sure he's smart?
Right. I'm gonna. You're right. I guess I don't know that, but let's play. I'm gonna have to torch you for a couple minutes. We're gonna watch him for a few minutes. I'm sorry, but this is all gonna matter. We're gonna defeat the final boss.
Yeah, I dislike his face a lot.
On
okay.
This. Okay, so I'm reading Homer, and I'm reading the Iliad or the Odyssey, and I don't believe that a lot of these things happened. But let's take the Iliad. Was there a Troy? Was there a Trojan horse? Do I know enough to get in there and dig these details out?
So turns out there is a historical Troy that was excavated in the 19th century. So let's use this for a second, all right? Troy exists. Does that mean Achilles exists? Does Zeus exist? Should we worship the old gods of Greece?
I mean, listen, the Empire State Building exists. Does that mean King Kong exists and died on it? No.
But that's so funny that he uses that example. Why would he do that? Why would he set himself up to get walked right into his own punch?
Maybe he's senile. I don't know, but like, because the people that listen to him want to believe him. They're not fact checking him.
Right.
Like, and that's where his livelihood is, right? So he is just like, I'll say whatever I want. It's the classic sort of appeal to authority, but in reverse, right? Like, I have a PhD, therefore all of these people are already going to believe what I have to say anyway. So like, what does it matter if atheists disagree with me or say it's wrong? Because the people that I'm feeding this bullshit to are never going to check. Right. And they are already predisposed to think atheists are like lying for fun or something.
Okay. Let's see why he said this. I forgot why he said this, but I know it's stupid.
And this is the stuff of what well-known books and journal articles are made. Yeah, I got this little piece of archaeology that says this is true. I got this from this from this. Nails from a crucifixion victim who was crucified in the 1st century, and we've got it. They reburied a skeleton, but they had it. They had a skeleton with the nails still through it. You pick bits and pieces here.
So does that? I'm trying to understand what his analogy is on why he mentioned Troy, because that makes him look. That's really like you can't use that analogy. That's a horrible analogy because you're basically saying, oh, Troy exists, so therefore everything in the Iliad must be true. Or you're saying, or what you are saying is because Troy exists, we should be more careful on what's true and what's not. Why would he say that? And then he talks about nails. Is anybody saying that crucifixions didn't happen? Who's saying
it's this weird straw man where it's like, this is an argument I can easily prove, but like, it still doesn't prove anything, right? It's like in the case for Christ, he's basically argues like So instead of trying to prove that there was 500 witnesses, he just assumes that evidence and then is like, how could 500 people possibly be wrong? And it's like, that is...
And you have, out of 500 witnesses, you have 0 of them writing anything down. There's not any primary sources. There's no physical evidence, no archaeology. All you have is Paul in 1 Corinthians saying, oh, 500 people saw this. That's it. You have one person saying that. You don't have 500 single eyewitnesses. You have one person who doesn't even know these people. It wasn't
and
even
he wasn't even there.
So he's a secondary source. It's not even primary. Whatever. Let's keep going.
And you put the case together from what you know, and then you write your master's thesis or dissertation talking about, well, I'm not going to accept the whole Iliad, but what if I can make this following story of that war, of what happened in Troy, the fall.
So let's apply it to Christianity. All right, Nazareth. We found Nazareth. We found some nails. Okay, Jesus probably existed. He probably was crucified. But are we going to accept that he rose from the dead and walked on water? I mean, wouldn't that be the same as saying I'm not going to accept that Achilles was a god who, had super speed, and or that Zeus was throwing lightning bolts at the cities and at the armies? Am I not wrong here?
No, I'm getting dumber listening to him. So
let's get dumber.
Yeah, let's get even dumber.
Fall of Troy, and that's what we do here. Was George Washington? We do it all the time. Is George Washington? Yeah, we say he would never tell a lie, and he cut down a cherry tree, and he took a whipping for this or that, or he threw the silver dollar across the Potomac River. We tell these stories. Davy Crockett, grinned a bear to death. And we go, oh yeah, that kind of stuff. That's not true. But what do we know about Davy Crockett? What do we know about? And someone says, well, that's only just a little less than 200 years ago. You're talking 2000. So, okay, fine. Let's talk about Julius Caesar. That's before Christ. Alexander, 2,500 years ago.
Right. Now he's about to get into Alexander, but let's pause. No, this is perfect. Because what is the point here?
Right. Like, I don't even know what he's trying to say. That's the problem. It's like, what argument are you making?
It almost sounds like he's being a real scholar. Like, he's approaching this like, oh, we should approach the text with, maybe this didn't all happen, but let's see what we know.
Right.
How does that prove that? Because this is the guy who thinks the resurrection happened, thinks miracles happen, thinks Jesus really is God. He's a believer. So how does that equate at all?
That's what I'm like. I know he thinks he's doing something, but nobody else knows what he's doing.
I have no idea. And it has to be this. He has to know that his audience is just like,
rocks?
Oh, did you hear that? Oh, yeah. Like they're just like, whatever he says, he could just be like, oh yeah, a guy named Bob in the first century existed, so therefore Jesus.
But like, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if like these people are the same people that are like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That sounds Aramaic. But there's just a lack of critical thought, because once you start pulling that thread, it all comes undone
very quickly.
So like, it's safer to just never pull that thread and to let someone keep like spoon feeding you manure, than to have to think for yourself. Literally. But again, I still don't know what his fucking argument is here. Like,
I guess we'll have to keep going.
Sorry.
So that's how they do it. And I ask, what can we know about Jesus from non-Christian, or at least non-New Testament sources alone? In the non-Christian category, books written from a non-Christian viewpoint within about 150 years after Jesus' death, still early by ancient history. Remember, Alexander is twice that long for the first biography, and it's not even.
So I looked up he's talking about 17 extra biblical sources, 100 to 150 years later, right? Let's look at who they are. Tacitus, 116 AD, gives us like a couple sentences. He basically regurgitates what Josephus said. So what you're getting is Josephus writes about a man named Jesus who got killed by Pilate, and it gets forged, by the way, and interpolated by a later church. Anyways, let's not even get into that. Let's give them Josephus. Let's grant that Josephus is real. Josephus writes that. It gets regurgitated by Tacitus. Same thing. That's 116. Josephus is 96 AD. That's a lifetime away. That's a whole generation 2 generations almost later.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
30.
it's the same time period, 96, the same time period that like Revelation is written.
Right.
And
So
at that point, they're like, end of the world. Like,
no, that's such a good point. They talk about Josephus as if he was like living in the time of Jesus. Josephus
Right.
is after Paul and after the Gospels. So
Yeah.
what? He heard the story. Big
Yep.
like it does. They're like Josephus. Oh my God, Josephus
mean,
is so
both
late.
John, the book of John and Revelation are written, most scholars agree, sometime between 90 and 100.
Right.
And so, like,
So the fact that Josephus heard the story is nothing. It doesn't
right.
mean anything.
It's
Then
like,
Josephus.
yeah, they were still talking about it.
Right. And then you got Josephus, you got Clement of Alexandria, who's a church father, and that's in
Right.
the 1st century. And then that's it for the 1st century. That's it too. 2nd century, you got Tacitus, Lucian, I mean, that's 160. The Maraber Serpian guy, there's nothing that exists for him. That's just someone quoting him later on. That doesn't exist. Josephus, I said that. You have Thales, which is also gone. And and he talks about he doesn't even mention Jesus. He talks about an eclipse happening on Passover. So the Christians are like, oh, see, that's the one that's mentioned in the Bible. That means it doesn't mention Jesus. There's no mention of Jesus at all. So
Oy vey.
then you have Phlegon, late 2nd century. You have the Talmud. He uses the Talmud. I don't know why. That's 400 AD. I guess there's talking about sources in the Talmud, maybe. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah. Solid choice.
Yeah, solid choice, right?
I mean, this man is clearly working with 2 brain cells that are fighting for 3rd place. So, like, I don't think we can expect a lot. But, like,
yeah,
come on.
And then you have Pliny the Younger, which you mentioned. It's 110. Ignatius is 110.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. All the other sources are Gnostic apocryphal texts. And they're counting them as extra biblical. So there's not 17. There's really like 12. And only 2 of them are in the 1st century. All of them are in middle 2nd century, late 2nd century. So
yeah.
That is completely nonsense that he's saying that. To me, that's the biggest thing that I want to make clear is like these extra biblical sources that he will keep talking about. So what they do is, you notice how the dates.
Josephus,
37
in a passage that, although it's disputed, virtually.
See how it says 38 to 97? They always put the date of their birth.
Yeah.
Because they want you to think that he wrote this sometime in the 30s. No,
he was born.
He wrote this the year before he died. This is the last thing he did. Like 96, he wrote that. So it should say 96. It's 38. What does that mean? They do this for everybody.
Everybody believes the passage, the portion about the cross there, that he died, and Josephus also mentions Tiberius Caesar. So this is all right there. You've got some Gnostic sources that mention these.
Gospel of Truth. That's a Gnostic. Why would that count as an extra biblical source? Why? Because it didn't make the canon? Because the church didn't want it? That's still a Bible.
I mean, right, exactly. And they discount Gnostic texts as being like effectively heretical, right?
Exactly.
So but then we're going to say at the same time, but they talk about Jesus, proof.
Right. And look at, Tacitus. They had his date. He was born in 55. Oh, no, he wrote it in like 113, by the way.
Like, was he?
And
did he come out of the womb with a pen?
Yeah, and this is the funny part. He spells his name wrong, calls him Crestus. So Tacitus, Pliny the Younger, Suetonius, all the Roman sources that are, Josephus and whatever, those are like, closer towards that region of the world. But these sources, they act like they just heard it for the first time. All 3 of them, Tacitus, Suetonius, and Pliny the Younger, the way they approach it are like some guy, Crestus, or whoever the fuck it is. I don't know. I guess he died. They don't know who he is. Yeah. They're just hearing about him for the first time. It's very clear when you read them. And
but the thing is like, I know that Western civilization has made Jesus into this like incredibly important person, but like no one gave a fuck then. And like not for a long time after, except for a very select small group of people. I mean, we had other rabbis doing exactly the same thing as Jesus at the same time. It's just they didn't get sort of deified, right? Like but it's all the same shit. And at the time, this would have just been another guy preaching current Jewish beliefs.
Exactly. In fact, Julius Caesar, when he died, there's a Virgil. The text, it's called the Georgics. If you don't believe me, look this up. Anyone's watching. There's a text called the Georgics by Virgil. He says that when Julius Caesar died, the sky turned black, there was an eclipse, and the earth quaked.
Sounds right to me.
It's just a normal trope. Okay, so and then they said on his funeral, when they did the funeral for Caesar, the comet Venus or the god Venus, there was a comet in the sky, so they're like, oh, that's Venus, and then supposedly the god Venus came down, grabbed Julius Caesar, and brought him up to heaven and gave him a throne in heaven, so that when he adopted Octavian, when he was born or he became the emperor, he styled himself as son of God. See that? That's the comet of Venus with Divius Ilius. He's the son of God. So why am I saying this? Am I saying that Jesus is Augustus? No. What I'm saying is that these tropes are so common back then.
Yeah.
They were everywhere.
Well, and like, we're really going to base our entire belief system and life off of people that believe in a fundamentally flawed cosmology. I mean, they believe that like above the clouds is heaven.
Right.
And like below your feet is hell. So like, this is what we're working with. And y'all think that they have the secret to life figured out?
You know what's so funny about that is later on in this video that we're about to see, he talks about why people don't believe in Christianity. And he goes, because they don't believe in Narnia.
I've observed, it seems to me that there's a more burdensome standard for evidence for the resurrection than there is for other historical things. Do you find that to be true?
Sure.
Yeah.
Because they don't believe in Narnia. They don't believe in the Yellow Brick Road. I mean, if you don't think there's a Middle Earth or a Narnia or a Yellow Brick Road, it is kind of strange. No matter what the evidence is, you're going to say, well, hallucinations. Right. And you go, I'm sorry, we have really good early evidence for group appearances, which we do, and people don't see hallucinations in groups. Well, people don't see resurrected people either.
Well, he's actually saying something profound he doesn't realize, because modern science is starting to vindicate. There's two main theories about reality back in the ancient world. There was the Epicureans, the atomists, who thought that there was no heaven and hell. This is it. We're all atoms and void. That's it. And then you had the Platonists. The Platonists believed in forms, metaphysics, heaven and hell. Well, modern science is now confirming that the atomists were right and the Platonists were wrong. So, I mean, that alone is like enough for somebody to just say religion can't be true. But I mean, I'm getting a little deep in the weeds here, but like that's what he doesn't even realize that he's saying something.
That's fine. I like it, but
yeah. So let's keep this going.
I mean, it's this. Yeah.
This is where it gets crazy.
Go for it.
This is where he talks about Alexander.
Biography that we have of Alexander is Alexander the Great is almost 300 years later, and the best biography.
That's not true at all. In fact, he's kind of right.
Dog, come on.
So here's what he's doing. He's doing exactly what he did before with the Livy and the text with Herodotus, saying we don't have anything from those sources. But it's bullshit, because we know for a fact that when Alexander died, first of all, while he was alive, he had a biographer following him around named Castellanus. He was writing what was known as the journal. So this is referenced by other people that knew. So we know this was already happening. Aristobulus is quoted by people in the ancient world in the Ptolemaic Empire, the Seleucid Empire. He was writing a history as far back as 310 BC, 20 years within Alexander's death. Cleitarchus wrote a history within a decade of Alexander's life, wrote a whole entire story. Ptolemy wrote this. Ptolemy wrote a history. He said that Alexander was the son of Ammon. Ptolemy carved the story in the walls in Luxor about Alexander freeing none of us can read hieroglyphics, but please fact check me on this. Please look this up. Ptolemy wrote on the walls of Luxor that Alexander the Great came to Egypt, freed them from the bonds of the Persians, and he was the son of Ammon, the god who lives in the desert in Siwa in Egypt, and that Alexander visited Ammon and was told that he is the son of God and that he would go conquer the world. This is all written on the walls of Egypt, and so he founded 30 plus cities. What cities did Jesus find? Okay, and now I'm getting a little too
hell.
I want to focus on the text, but this is just mind-blowing shit right here.
Well, that someone is saying this so loudly, so confident, and so wrong.
Right.
Like,
Biographies of Alexander are 425 to 450, almost half a millennium.
No, he's talking about Diodorus Siculus, and Diodorus Siculus literally writes in his writings that he's borrowing from the sources that I mentioned. He literally tells you this. It was known as a Vulgate. The Vulgate was the sources. It was Aristobulus, Clitarchus.
Yeah.
Diodorus Siculus is literally using sources that are older than him, and we know this. We know that the ancients couldn't preserve texts; they had to copy them, pass them down. That's just how it was. So for him to compare,
I mean, what did they think that there's like a fax machine back there? Like,
yeah, do they have freezers to
we're
put like
Xeroxing things now?
It's my
Like,
this is a PhD scholar saying this shit, man, and I'm an amateur.
Yeah.
The fact that I can figure this out is like what?
Mark
Google
at plus 40.
You could just Google
is
it.
Excellent.
And
too late to be valuable. And I said, way too late to be valuable at plus 40 to plus 65? Yeah, way too late. I said, do you read much ancient history? Oh, the answer was obviously no.
You don't.
And I said, well, let me ask you a question. How much do we know about Alexander the Great? And I'm not using a bad example here, I'm using a good example. What about Alexander the Great?
I'm just trying to highlight that this is one of his famous speeches.
He's still a young man. Mm-hmm. He said, oh, we know a lot about Alexander the Great.
He said this
first,
multiple places.
Source, extant source that we have for Alexander the Great on the same scale as the Gospels.
Do you hear what he just said? He said first source. He didn't say first full story. First source.
Same scale as the Gospels.
Look at this. This alone is a source for Alexander. This coin. I'm serious though. It shows him.
No, I know.
The horns. See those horns? That's the symbol of him being the son of Ammon, the god of the ram god or whatever.
Right.
So it's like we have archaeology. This right here. This is a cuneiform tablet found in Persia that it accounts the death of Alexander. So it's writing about Alexander has died today. It gets even crazier. This is literally Alexander was here. Literally. That's literally what it is. Alexander was here. And all over the ancient world, as I've shown you, he's finding cities and building new cities. Alexandria had the biggest library in the world. He found over 30 cities. Most of them were named Alexandria. Now,
not confusing.
He's saying the first source for the life of Alexander is, look at.
Don't worry, I got a little ways to go. You get the idea?
No, I don't get the idea.
First source for Alexander.
You need more exercise?
Just short of 300 years later.
The first source for Alexander. Did you hear? Am I wrong here? Did he not say that?
That's what he said.
The first source for Alexander the Great. Mind blowing. I mean, I've showed you. Like, obviously, I showed it, but like, his name is written on walls. His story is being told by people. We have sources. We have people mentioning him. Like, what the fuck? I get so worked up about this shit. I'm sorry.
Oh, I do too. Don't feel bad.
Crazy.
But man, we can sure know a lot about him. Best sources for Alexander: Arian and Plutarch.
Okay, he's comparing regular sources to best sources. So if you want to say that, fine, you can say best sources. But here we go. We have the Codex Sinaiticus, which is the oldest full Bible that exists. Is in 325 AD. This is put together. Before this, all you have is fragments like this. So under his own standards, we have 200 years later. 300 years later. I don't know. I couldn't do math for a second. So under his own standards, the Bible should not be taken seriously. He's saying that
he has no standards.
Right. He doesn't have standards.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like his dating life. No standards whatsoever. No, but like really, he just takes whatever information he wants and then just fits it into whatever. But then when it comes to sources for other people, I mean, clearly he's fucking lying. Like,
right. This is the description written by many people from the ancient world who visited the tomb of Alexander. This is what it looked like. We can put together a description based on how many descriptions. Augustus went to go visit him. Caesar went to go visit him. All these people loved Alexander. Ptolemy worshipped him. He was worshipped as a god. He was deified. Like here's a picture of his tomb. You know what I mean? Like there's so many. I'm trying to figure out, what does he mean by sources? Does he mean like what is he talking about? I don't understand what he's talking about.
Do you think he knows what he's talking about? Because
Well,
I'm not sure. Like, he's like saying words, and I know what they mean individually, but together they're not making a lot of sense.
And then you compare that to, so I've literally just showed like archaeology sources that go back to the time of Alexander's life, not just 40, 50 years later. What can you say about Jesus? What
Yeah, and it
Nothing.
boggles my mind, right? That like God is going to go through, even if we leave aside how fucking nuts that entire plan of salvation is, we won't even talk about that. You are going to send your son to earth to die for people. And it's obviously very important to you because you're doing this thing. And then you just don't remind anyone to like write it down while it's happening. Like to like do something to make it believable. No, you get a bunch of accounts that contradict each other a lifetime, I mean, not a lifetime, but 30 to 40 years after the fact. Like, oh God.
No, and what you just said is what you said. If Christians roll their eyes when you say shit like that.
I know.
But let's be real for a second. You got a guy who's claiming to be the Son of God, and he wants everyone to believe in him. That's all he wants. He doesn't care what you do. If you believe in me, your sins are washed away, right? So you would think he would write something down and say, "This is my edicts. This is my laws. This is what I want people to follow." You would think that somebody following him, like the real Matthew or the real Peter, would actually, not some later guy saying I'm Matthew and Mark, which scholars all agree is what happened. These Gospels are not written by the original Matthew or original Luke. These are written by someone saying I'm Luke. That's seriously. Like Luke,
and it's not even that. It's like someone wrote it, and then in the 2nd century, somebody was like, "Let's attribute this name to it."
Right.
They're all anonymous. It's not like someone saying like, "I, Luke, am writing this," and we just don't know who the fuck Luke is. It's like somebody else just slapped it on there later on. And that's all.
What gets me the most about this is like, you can pull up any historian who's written. Like you can look. Rufus wrote a book about Alexander the Great. Let's see, Plutarch, Rufus, Arian, Timagenes, I can't pronounce the name, Ptolemy, Diodorus of Sicily, Fedorovsky, all these people who wrote biographies of Alexander the Great, when you look them up, they wrote other stuff. They wrote about morals. They wrote about other people. What about these? So you look at Luke and Matthew and Mark, these are really elaborate texts. These are well written. They know Greek really well. This is not some dumb idiot in the desert somewhere. Somebody who knows how to write and read is writing this. So what else is he writing? What other works of Luke do we have? Nothing.
Yeah, maybe Acts.
That's a red flag. Yeah, he wrote it all together though. Luke. Acts,
there isn't any. There isn't any, and also you like really genuinely, you don't think if there's some guy walking on water that somebody wasn't going to notice that?
Right.
Like anybody, one person.
And what's so mind blowing about what you just said is you have 20, maybe more, maybe 30 authors and historians alive in that time. Philo was living in Alexandria. He was a Jew who believed in the Trinity. He believed that the Logos would be the Son of God, and he was looking for the Messiah. Doesn't mention Jesus once. Pliny the Elder, not Pliny the Younger, Pliny the Elder, was in Judea. He met the Essenes. He's writing about prodigal births, miracles. Doesn't mention Jesus. That's in the 50s. Then you have Seneca. Nothing. He's writing in the same time period. I can literally give a list. I'll show it on the screen right now as I'm editing. This is a list of all the writers in the 1st century. None of them mention Jesus. Only Josephus and that church father, Clement of Alexandria. And then other than that, it's just like epistles of Paul and all
fan
that.
Fiction.
Exactly. So back to the point I was trying to make from what you said. If you had a guy who was really doing all this stuff, who was performing miracles, walking on water, feeding 5,000 people with fish. Why is that none of them have heard of this? Even if they didn't believe it, even if they thought it was bullshit, they should have wrote, there's a guy claiming to be the Messiah in Israel right now. He's got 5,000 followers. This is a big deal. None of them say that.
Yeah. They don't even say his name. Like, yeah.
You're right. They don't. And they get and the ones that do get his name wrong. Crestus. Some guy named Crestus.
Yeah.
Like, that's, to me, it's just like, this is why I deconverted. Because they're doubling down on this shit instead of being honest and being like, the evidence is really bad, but I just believe it. I believe this story. I like the parables. I love the parables. I believe it. Fine. If that's what I appreciate that. Whatever.
I'd rather have someone be honest and just be like, yeah, I don't know that I can prove this historically, but I believe it, and it's making my life better.
That's what separates the good scholars like Dale C. Ellison Jr. from Gary Habermas. You don't see Dale C. Ellison Jr. going to churches and talking about there's more proof for Jesus than Alexander the Great. You would never see him say that. In fact,
because it's bullshit.
In fact, all you see him saying, "Oh, the Gospels disagree. There's contradictions." You see him saying stuff like that, but yeah, he still believes. Yeah. He has a personal reason why he believes. Nothing wrong with that.
Great. Yeah, I don't care about people's personal beliefs. I care about the lies that they spew.
Exactly.
Because those are dangerous and they harm people, right? Like, people might not see it as like, well, what do you care if they're pushing that the Gospels are a historical, reality? Well, I care because they're then extrapolating that the rest of the Bible is also a historical reality and is inerrant and carries these rules that we should all follow. And then they push ideologies that are harmful to people based on this because they can't see the Bible in any other way except for historical fact and like the gold standard of how to live your life. Like,
right. Yeah. So I want to end on a funny note.
I cannot stand Cameron.
Yeah, no. So the reason why I'm showing you his face right now is because a couple weeks ago he put out a video, and it was new evidence from the resurrection that no one's heard of yet. Oh my God, what could this possibly be? And this, I'm
sure, and this random guy now has it.
Yeah, so watch this clip, and I want you to pay attention to Cameron's his
terrible haircut.
No, like the way just watch his face. Watch how he goes from being interested to what is this to being like, oh, there's nothing here. Just watch.
Hey, welcome to Capturing Christianity. I'm Cameron Bertuzzi. Today, I am joined by Dr. Gary Habermas, and we're looking at some new evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. It's going to be a really exciting episode because I don't even know what he's talking about. I don't know what this new evidence is. He's actually going to reveal it here live on the streams.
Now, some of the things I'm talking about will be familiar to people, but I think it's the arrangement of them that's really new. So let me say it this way.
Fast forwarded for a reason. I just want to show. Look at his reaction.
He's using terms that they probably know a lot about before he writes the letter to them. So that's earlier than 1 Thessalonians. Okay. Now, let me back up from the other end. Am I making sense so far?
Yep.
Should I slow down on any of this?
No, it's good. Yeah, just keep going. I'll slow you down if you need to.
Speed it up, buddy.
Dude, that reaction
hilarious.
Was fucking crazy. If you're a Christian,
you saw him like sink.
You saw, yeah. That's why I fast forwarded. I wanted you to see like the time lapse of his like interest, and then it gets to him looking at his phone like, what am I listening?
Like, not this bullshit again.
If you're a Christian like Cameron is, and nothing bad to say about Cameron, he's got a good channel. But
I don't like.
But yeah, I mean, besides some of them shits he says, but whatever. The fact that he is a Christian and he's got a PhD scholar gonna tell him I have new evidence of the resurrection, and that's his reaction. I don't know if that's new evidence there.
Doesn't sound like new evidence. It doesn't sound like any evidence at all by a like legal standard.
He knows how he worded it. He says this might not be new evidence, but it's the arrangement of the evidence.
But I'm going to tell you in a different order.
Right?
Why?
That's what Gary Habermas does. He he's working off his emotions of, I believe in this, I want it to be true, so I'm going to be the white knight, and I'm going to make it true. I'm going to be the source for all Christians. They could use me and say, look, I got a guy who knows what
I know a guy.
Right.
He's met Jesus. Trust me. Just trust me, bro.
And that's what it comes down to. In the movie Case for Christ, Lee Strobel walks up to his friend who's a Christian. Lee Strobel is an atheist at the time.
Uh-huh.
What sources do you got? And he throws a book on the table and says, Gary Habermas.
Thinks I'm trying to assassinate Christianity. You sure you want to hand me that gun?
I'm pretty sure you're not going to be able to pull the trigger.
All right, who's the big authority on the resurrection? Dr. Gary Habermas. He debated Antony Flew. That guy's one of my heroes.
He's in Wisconsin, by the way.
Like, it's just crazy. And this is the top of the pyramid for the Christians right here.
Good Lord. If that's the top, like, I don't even, usually I at least have like a joke, but like, I'm just so sad that that's the top of the pyramid. Like,
it's just crazy. It's just crazy how they're still going so strong in America. I mean, I guess
it's in Marianas Trench.
I guess that in Europe, it's not really like that anymore. They're kind of figuring shit out there.
I think it's largely evangelicals, to be honest, because I know there's a lot of denominations, especially that aren't in America, that just sort of like the community. They have like a basic belief in the Bible, but they're not sitting there like trying. I mean, it's like a very post-Enlightenment take on the Bible, right? Where you're like, oh, I'm going to scientifically prove everything. That's not how the books were written. That's not what their purpose was. Nobody before that approached the Bible that way. And then you get this trend afterwards, and it's being taken to just the nth degree by these people. But the evidence is simply not there. No matter how many ways you want to talk about, well, you know, this happened around there, or this person said something about this. Like, what actual hard evidence do we have that this thing happened? Like, you're telling me that Jesus died, the tombs opened up, a bunch of zombies popped out and walked around, and nobody wrote it down?
Right.
Like,
in fact, out of the 4 Gospels, only Matthew remembers that zombies came out of the fucking ground.
Right. Like, that's... I feel like we brush over that too much, where it's like...
Are we being serious? And then, or how about Philip baptizing the Ethiopian, and then he teleports to a fucking new city? Wait a minute. What did that? When does that happen ever?
Through Christ, all things are possible, brother.
Exactly.
So, including teleportation.
Yeah, it's wild shit.
Yeah, but hey, I'm sure soon news will be dropping, fresh evidence.
Yeah, there'll be some new. The tomb was found. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no body. There was a tomb. There's no body in it, so obviously Jesus.
Yeah, a new shroud was found. It looks like Jesus. This guy's got a beard, so.
Don't tell SJ.
Probably him.
Don't tell SJ.
That's the craziest one. But yeah, your YouTube channel. Everyone should go subscribe. Anything else you want to plug while we're here?
I mean, you can find me on TikTok, Queen of the Heathens. I will be trying to build up my YouTube channel. I just started it because I'm like a boomer at heart, and so I've been forced kicking and screaming into the digital world here. But yeah, those are the only 2. I mean, I am on Twitter and Instagram, but most of my content would be on TikTok, unless you just want to see me be a raging bitch. I'm on Twitter. But anyway, so that's it. Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Definitely was. I get all worked up when I get into shit like this. So.
Oh, me too. Like, yeah.
It was fun though.
Yeah, thank you.
And like I always say, you have just attained true.
You have just attained true gnosis. The demiurge has no power over you.